The metal doors slid open with a low hiss, and Commander Connor Boxton stepped inside, the echo of his boots carrying across the vast chamber. The room looked nothing like the warm, diplomatic halls of Earth. No flags, no decorations, no hint of softness. It was silver, all of it, a sharp and gleaming testament to a species that prized precision over beauty. Even the air felt clinical, almost sterile, as though it had been scrubbed clean of warmth. His reflection followed him on the polished metal floor, a shadow of authority, and yet Connor felt the weight of every step. This wasn't just a meeting. This was history, and the burden of Earth's future rested squarely on his shoulders. Down at the far end of the oval table sat the alien who would decide humanity's fate. She rose as he approached, her movements impossibly graceful, like liquid, flowing through space. Viceroy Azra Kin was unlike anything he had imagined from the briefings. Humanoid in structure, yes, but that was where the similarities ended. Her skin shimmered like porcelain, with a faint undertone of silver, stretched over a frame that spoke of both strength and elegance. A crest of cartilage swept back from her high forehead, narrowing into two slender tendrils, trailing like a braided crown down her back. And her eyes, God, those eyes vast pools of molten silver with no pupils, no whites, just shifting metallic currents that seemed to see right through him. Commander Boxton, she said, her voice a cool, melodic soprano that carried no inflection, no warmth. Welcome to Farian Prime. Connor gave a crisp military bow, fist to chest, masking the flicker of awe beneath his practiced composure. Viceroy Kin, it's an honor to stand here as Earth's representative. I hope today marks the beginning of something remarkable for both our peoples. She inclined her head slightly, then gestured to the towering chair across from her own. Connor sat, feeling the hard, unyielding surface beneath him, a throne without comfort, like the room itself. Typical of a species obsessed with logic and control, he thought. No distractions. No softness. We will speak of your alliance proposal, Azra said. But first, I have a query of a personal nature. That caught him off guard. Of course, ask away. Her silver gaze fixed on him, unblinking, unreadable. Explain to me, Commander. How do humans mate? Connor nearly choked on his own breath. I beg your pardon? Mating, she clarified without hesitation. Copulation, procreation. Our species reproduces through a controlled genetic fusion in laboratory conditions. There is no physical contact, no emotional entanglement. It is efficient, but I have heard rumors that humans... She tilted her head, the faintest shadow of curiosity flickering across her face. That humans engage in this act not only for reproduction, but for pleasure. The silence stretched. Connor's mind scrambled, trying to reconcile the sheer absurdity of this moment. Of all the questions he expected from the first Farian envoy, the birds and the bees wasn't on the list. Well, he said finally, clearing his throat, you heard correctly. Humans, it's different for us. Sex isn't just about creating life, it's about connection. It's emotional, physical. It's intimate. Azra leaned forward slightly, her silver eyes unblinking. Explain, what purpose does this intimacy serve? Connor swallowed hard. It's not about purpose, it's about meaning. When two people care for each other, when they want each other, every touch, every breath feels alive. It's passion, Azra. It's fire. Without it, life would feel empty. Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment. Then she sat back slowly, as if filing his words away for later dissection. Fascinating, she murmured, though her tone held no emotion yet something in her eyes, a shimmer like liquid metal. Rippling betrayed a question unspoken. I will consider this. Connor forced a smile, though his pulse still thudded in his ears. He came here to negotiate treaties, to secure humanity's survival. Instead, The first seed of something unexpected had been planted, an opening he didn't yet understand, but one he couldn't ignore. And as Azra turned her gaze to the stars beyond the chamber wall, for the first time in her life, she felt the faintest tremor of curiosity and something else. Something dangerously close to hunger stirred deep within. Asterisk. The hum of the conference chamber lingered in Connor's ears long after he left, a phantom echo of the strangest question he'd ever been asked. He replayed the words in his mind as he walked the narrow steel corridors of the Farian capital station. How do humans mate? God, he thought, if his mission report ever included that line, the brass back on Earth would lose their minds. He stopped before a tall viewport, staring out at the endless black of space, broken only by the luminous curve of Farian Prime below. Its oceans gleamed like liquid metal beneath ribbons of cloud, a breathtaking world that still felt cold to him. Everything about these people was cold, sleek, perfect, unyielding. They claimed logic ruled all things, that emotion was a flaw, a dangerous vulnerability. And yet, Azra had asked, not out of mockery, not as an insult, but with something he had never expected from a Farian. Curiosity. That flicker stayed with him all night. By morning, the station lights had shifted to mimic Farian dawn, a pale, sterile glow that washed color from everything. Connor was fastening his jacket when the door chime rang. He frowned. No one visited human quarters without clearance. When the door slid open, every trace of sleep vanished. Azra stood there. The Viceroy was a vision in silver, her bodysuit seamless, gleaming, sculpted to perfection. She moved with an elegance that made the corridor seem suddenly too small for her presence. Her hands were clasped behind her back, her expression calm, yet her eyes. Something simmered there. Something he couldn't name. Commander Boxton. She said, voice smooth as glass, "May I enter?" Connor stepped aside, masking his surprise with a polite nod. Of course. She walked in, gaze sweeping over the stark human furnishings, as though cataloging an alien artifact. Her nose wrinkled almost imperceptibly at the clutter. A discarded jacket, a datapad blinking on the knitstand. For the first time, Connor wondered what her chambers looked like. Empty, probably. Like her voice, like her life. "What can I do for you, Viceroy?" he asked, sinking onto the edge of his bunk. She turned to him, posture flawless, eyes bright with that same enigmatic gleam. "I wish to continue our discussion." Connor blinked. "About the Alliance?" "About mating," she said without hesitation. He nearly choked. "Azra, I have considered your words," she continued, cutting across him with the precision of a blade. "You claimed that human intimacy involves emotion, that it enhances physical pleasure. I find this difficult to comprehend, and so I seek clarity." Connor raked a hand through his hair. "You want me to explain?" "Again?" "No," she said simply. "I want you to demonstrate." For a moment, the silence was deafening. Connor stared at her, certain he'd misheard. Demonstrate? Here? Now? His brain scrambled for protocol, for the diplomatic manual that had nothing about this scenario. "You mean physically?" His voice came out hoarse. "Correct." Her tone was clinical, but the faintest blush soft, silvery touched the high curve of her cheekbones. "Consider it a cultural exchange, for the sake of science." Science? Sure. That was one way to put it. Connor's heart thudded in his chest, a steady drumbeat of warning and want. He should refuse. Every instinct drilled into him screamed that this was a minefield, a scandal waiting to happen, a treaty hanging by a thread. But then he looked at her, really looked. The flawless mask of logic, the rigid posture, the voice stripped of inflection, all hiding a single, undeniable truth. She wanted to feel. Even if she didn't understand why. Connor stood slowly, his boots whispering against the floor, as he closed the space between them. "If we do this," he said, his voice low, "we take it slow. And if at any point you want me to stop, you say the word. Clear?" Azra inclined her head, her silver eyes locked on his, unblinking. "Clear." He drew a breath, steadying himself against the storm in his veins. Gently, so gently, he raised a hand and let his fingers brush the line of her jaw. Her skin was cool and possibly smooth, like polished stone warmed by starlight. Azra inhaled sharply. The tiniest sound, but to Connor it was deafening. "This," he murmured, his thumb tracing the edge of her lips, "is called a caress. It's how we show affection." She stood motionless, her breathing shallow, eyes wide and glimmering like molten silver. "I feel." Her voice faltered, the first crack in the glacier. "A strange sensation beneath the skin. Heat." "That's arousal," Connor said softly, his pulse racing with hers. "It means your body likes what's happening. It wants more." Azra's lips parted, her composure unraveling thread by thread. And in that moment, Connor knew two things with absolute certainty. The alliance was no longer his only mission, and he was stepping into a territory more dangerous and more intoxicating than any battlefield dot, and Azra Kin, the untouchable viceroy, was about to learn the meaning of desire. Asterisk. The air in the room felt heavier than before, as if the entire station had tilted on its axis, pulling them toward each other with an unseen force. Connor's hand lingered against Azra's jaw, his fingers tracing the smooth, alien line of her cheek. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. But her breathing, he heard it now, shallow and quick, betraying the iron composure she wore like armor. Slowly, carefully, Connor withdrew his hand, giving her a chance to step back, to reclaim that icy distance. She didn't. She stood rooted. In place, her silver eyes locked on him like twin moons orbiting a star they couldn't escape. "Your skin," he said, his voice roughened by something he refused to name. "It feels incredible." Azra tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that sent heat crawling up his spine. "You touched me lightly," she observed, her tone precise, almost clinical. Yet my entire body reacted. My pulse accelerated. My breath shortened. Her fingers brushed her own throat, as if confirming the evidence. Why does such minimal contact cause such disproportionate response? Connor managed a smile tight, strained. Because touch isn't just about nerves. It's about anticipation, about connection. Your mind knows something intimate is happening, and your body responds. Azra's gaze flickered down to his lips, just for a fraction of a second, but Connor saw it. He felt it like a jolt to the chest. Before he could speak, she closed the distance between them by a single step. It wasn't much, but in that small shift, the world seemed to narrow to the space between their mouths. "Demonstrate more," she said softly. Not a command this time, a request. Connor's breath hitched. Every rational thought screamed for restraint. He was an envoy, a soldier. The entire future of Earth rested on his discipline. And yet, his hand rose almost of its own accord, cupping. Her jaw again, firmer this time, his thumb brushing the sharp line of her cheekbone. Azra shivered, actually shivered. That single reaction shattered the last of his hesitation. "Lesson 2, he murmured, his voice low, warm against the sterile chill of the room. "Kissing." And then his lips touched hers not at first. It was gentle testing, coaxing. Her lips were cooler than he expected, firm but impossibly soft, tasting faintly of something metallic and sweet, like mint tempered by starlight. She stiffened, a rigid statue in his hands. For a heartbeat, he thought he'd gone too far. Then her mouth parted, tentative, clumsy, but hungry. Her hands, those elegant, alien hands, rose and gripped his shoulders, not with grace, but with desperation. Connor deepened the kiss slowly, giving her time to follow his lead, his tongue grazing hers in a slow, deliberate stroke. Ozra made a sound then, low and startled, a sound that would haunt him forever, a gasp that was almost a moan, ripped from somewhere deep, somewhere primal. When they broke apart, her silver eyes were wide, luminous, and trembling with something. Raw, her chest rose and fell in sharp, unsteady bursts. Her voice faltered. For the first time, Viceroy Ozra Kin, unshakable, untouchable, looked utterly lost. I experienced something. A surge, heat, pleasure. She swallowed. Hard, her crest trembling faintly, and longing for more. Connor's pulse thundered in his ears. "That's desire," he said gently. "It means you're alive. It means you want." She closed her eyes, as if the word itself burned. When they opened again, they were different, brighter, darker, like molten silver stirred by a storm. "This is dangerous," she whispered, but she didn't move away. If anything, she leaned closer, her breath ghosting across his skin. Connor almost laughed low and bitter. "Tell me something I don't know." The door chime shattered the moment. They both froze. The sharp tone echoed through the room like a gunshot. Ozra jerked back, her face rearranging into a mask of cold perfection, so fast it made Connor's head spin. "Remain silent," she hissed, her voice a blade now, cutting through the charged air. Then, in one fluid motion, she slipped toward the far wall, her silhouette melting into the silver panels as if she belonged to the metal itself. The chime sounded again, louder, more insistent. Connor turned, throat dry, as the door slid open to reveal a Farian attendant, all narrow limbs and disdainful eyes. "Commander Boxton," the alien intoned, its voice like grinding glass. "The council awaits your presence." Connor nodded, stiffly, forcing his features into a mask of neutrality, while his heart pounded like a war drum. Behind him, Ozra was gone, vanished without a sound, leaving only the faint, intoxicating trace of her scent in the cold air. As the door sealed shut, Connor exhaled slowly, dragging a hand down his face. God help him. This was no longer diplomacy. This was a war of a different kind, one he was losing, piece by piece, to an alien woman who had just tasted her first kiss. And deep in the shadows of the chamber, Ozra pressed her fingers to her lips, her breath uneven, her body trembling with sensations she had no words for. Legid told her to forget, to suppress, to bury the hunger clawing at her insides. But logic had lost. And for the first time in her life, she didn't care. Tomorrow, she vowed silently. Tomorrow she would return. And the human would teach her what came next. The station had gone quiet, its sterile corridors humming with the low pulse of life support systems. Outside, the galaxy sprawled like a sea of frozen fire, indifferent to the storm brewing behind. One sealed door. Connor sat on the edge of his bunk, elbows on his knees, staring at the wall as if sheer focus could erase the memory of her mouth on his dot. It couldn't. Every detail clung to him, the cool silk of her lips, the trembling exhale that had brushed his skin, the raw shock in those molten eyes when she'd tasted something her world had denied her. He had crossed a line. No, burned it to ash. And yet, if Ozra walked through that door right now, the chime sounded. Connor froze. Slowly, his gaze slid to the door. For one heartbeat, he considered ignoring it. Pretend he was asleep, pretend. He wasn't thinking about her every second since she'd vanished. The chime sounded again, soft, insistent. He rose, each step heavier than the last, and triggered the panel. Ozra stood there. She was no longer in silver. Tonight, her bodysuit shimmered like black water, clinging to her lithe frame, tracing every elegant line as though the fabric worshipped her. Her crest curved back in a regal sweep, her twin tendrils falling loose down her spine. But it wasn't the suit or the hair that stole his breath, it was her eyes. They burned no longer mirrors of cold logic, but liquid silver roiling with something unrestrained. Hunger. "Commander," she said, voice low, soft as a current sliding under ice. "May I enter?" Connor stepped aside wordlessly, his pulse a thunderclap in his ears. When the door sealed behind her, the silence between them was alive, thick, a wire stretched taut. She moved past him with measured grace, but her hands, he noticed them, clasped tightly behind her back, trembling ever so slightly. "I have considered," she said finally, turning to face him. Her voice was calm, but her breathing wasn't. "Our interaction, your explanations, the kiss." The word sounded strange on her tongue, like a forbidden incantation. "It awakened sensations I cannot dismiss." Connor swallowed hard. "Azra, I do not wish to dismiss them," she cut in, her eyes blazing brighter now. "I wish to understand them." A pause, sharp as a blade. "Teach me." God. The two words ripped through him, detonating every fragile restraint left in his body. He dragged a hand down his face, exhaling hard. "You're sure?" he asked hoarsely. "Because if we start this, there's no going back. I do not want to go back." Her voice shook, barely perceptible, but to Connor it was deafening. "Show me why your kind seeks this intimacy." Something in him snapped in 3 strides. He was before her, his hands bracketing her face, his mouth claiming hers in a kiss that scorched away the last remnants of diplomacy. She gasped against him, and he swallowed the sound, deepening the kiss until her cool lips warmed under his. His fingers slid into the soft fall of her tendrils, gripping gently, and she shuddered her first real surrender. He broke away only to whisper against her mouth, his breath ragged. Lesson 1 was kissing. Lesson 2. His lips traced down the line of her jaw to the hollow of her throat, where her pulse throbbed like a drum. Touch. His hands roamed slowly, deliberately, down the sleek planes of her body, learning her even as he taught. When his palms found the curve of her hips, she trembled so violently, he caught her before her knees gave way, guiding her backward until she sank onto the edge of the bunk. "Connor." Her voice cracked on his name, the syllables roughened. "Alien and beautiful. I feel." "Don't think," he murmured against her skin, his lips brushing the sensitive junction of her neck. "Just feel." And she did. With every stroke of his hands, every brush of his mouth, the icy veneer of Viceroy Azrakin shattered. Her breaths turned ragged, her fingers clutching his shoulders like lifelines. The sounds that tore from her throat were nothing. Like the calm, measured tones of logic, these were raw, feral, born of something she'd never been taught to name. When the crest of sensation hit her, it ripped her apart. She cried out, head thrown back, silver eyes blazing like stars as her body arched in abandon. The sound alone undid Connor, dragging him under with her into a riptide of pleasure, so consuming it left them both gasping, clinging to each other like wreckage in a sea of fire. For a long time, there was only silence. The steady thrum of their breathing, the faint, sweet hum of the station beyond the sealed door. Finally, Azra stirred. Her voice was hoarse, fractured. This was not weakness. Her fingers brushed his jaw, trembling but sure. It was power. Connor met her gaze, his chest tight with something more dangerous than desire. "No," he said softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. It was life. And deep inside, he knew the truth. This was no longer a lesson. It was the beginning of something neither of them could control, something that could burn the stars down before it broke. The chamber was a cathedral of steel and silence. Towering arches of polished alloy curved overhead, like the ribs of some cold, celestial beast. and beneath them sat the Farian High Council, 13 figures of unyielding logic, their silver eyes as still and merciless as the void. Connor stood at the foot of the dais, his uniform immaculate, his posture rigid, every fiber of his being screaming for calm. The stakes were higher than ever. One wrong word here, one misstep, and Earth's fragile future would fracture into dust. And yet, all he could think of was last night. Azra, single quotes, S voice ragged with need echoed in his skull. The way she'd clung to him, trembling, her lips whispering. His name as if tasting something forbidden and holy. He had crossed a line so absolute, there was no map for where he now stood. And if the council ever discovered. The thought died as the central figure, Archon Vale, leaned forward, his voice slicing through the chamber like a blade of ice. Commander Boxton, he intoned, each syllable heavy with disdain. Your species requests an alliance with the Farian Dominion, yet evidence suggests humanity is unstable, governed by primitive instincts, not reason. Explain why we should tie our fate to yours. Connor drew a breath, forcing steel into his spine. Because we're survivors, he said, his voice steady, echoing in the cavernous hall. Because when the odds are impossible, when the void closes in, we endure. Not because we lack fear, but because we feel it and fight anyway. That's what makes us strong. A ripple of disapproval swept the council like a silent wave. The Archon's mouth curled in something that might have been scorn. Strength derived from chaos is no strength at all. Emotion clouds judgment. It breeds weakness. Enough. The single word cracked like a thunderclap. Every head turned. Azra stood. The Viceroy rose from her seat at the council's flank, her silhouette carved in silver fire. For an instant, Connor saw two Azras, the one the galaxy knew, cold and perfect, and the one who had clutched his shoulders in the dark, her breath hot against his skin. When she spoke, her voice was no longer glass. It was steel. Esteemed counselors, she began, her tone measured but burning beneath the surface. I have observed Commander Boxton closely during these negotiations, closer than any of you. A murmur rippled through the chamber, sharp as shattered glass. Azra didn't falter. You claim emotion is weakness. You are wrong. I have seen what it does, what it is. Passion, connection. They are not flaws. They are power, the kind no sterile logic can replicate. Gasps whispered like wind through the chamber. The Archon's eyes narrowed, silver hardening into molten fury. You speak treason, Viceroy Kin? No. Azra shot back, stepping forward, her voice ringing like a blade drawn from its sheath. I speak truth. We are stagnant machines draped in flesh. We have forgotten what it means to feel. Humans have not. That is why they endure. That is why they rise when others fall. Their fire will not weaken us. It will ignite us. Connor's heart slammed against his ribs as her gaze found his across the chamber. In that look, there was number, rank, no titles, only raw defiance and something deeper, something that burned hotter than the stars. Archon Vale's voice dropped to a hiss. You are compromised. You will answer for this. Azra's crest flared in silent challenge. Perhaps I am compromised. Or perhaps I am evolved. Her silver eyes blazed, unyielding. And if evolution is treason, then so be it. The chamber erupted in chaos, counselors' voices crashing like a storm, the Archon's gavel hammering for silence. Connor stood frozen, pulse roaring in his ears, as the truth sank in like a blade. Azra hadn't just defended him. She had damned herself, for him, and as the uproar swelled, Connor felt the ground shift beneath his feet, not from fear, but from the knowledge that something irreversible had begun. Whatever happened next, neither of them was walking away unchanged. The Uproar in the council chamber had not ended. It had simply spilled into shadows. Connor could still hear echoes of it in his head as he stood alone on the observation deck of the Farian flagship. Beyond the glass stretched an ocean of stars, cold and eternal, mocking the storm inside his chest. He braced his hands on the railing, shoulders taut. Earth was safe barely. A council had voted, by the slimmest margin, to accept the alliance. Not out of trust, but out of necessity. The war with the outer colonies had bled them thin, and humanity's tenacity, once scorned, had become their lifeline. But Azra, they had dragged her from the chamber in silence. No chains Farians. Didn't need them. Shame was its own restraint in a culture built on logic. Her fate hung in the balance, a decision whispered behind closed doors. And it was his fault, his choices, his touch, his kiss. Connor clenched the railing until his knuckles burned. He'd risked careers before, missions, even his life, but never someone else's soul. The door behind him slid open with a whisper. He turned, heart seizing in his chest. Azra stood framed in the doorway, not in silver council armor, nor the sleek uniforms of state, but something simple, a flowing garment like molten night, unadorned, as if she had shed not just rank, but an entire world. Her tendrils hung loose, framing her face, and for the first time, she looked fragile. You're free, Connor breathed, his voice breaking on the word. Relief crashed through him like a wave. For now, she replied, stepping into the starlight. Her voice was low, hushed, but steady. They fear the truth, but they fear losing the alliance more. Connor moved toward her, but stopped when he saw her expression strange, unreadable, flickering with something vast and raw. Azra, he said softly, whatever comes next, we face it together. I won't let them. You do not understand. She cut in, and there was something in her tone that stilled him where he stood. Her silver eyes blazed, but not with anger, with something deeper, something that made the air between them hum. Then help me, he whispered. She drew closer, each step soundless on the polished deck, until the universe outside seemed to vanish, leaving only her and him and the gulf they had already crossed. Her hand rose, cool fingers brushing his jaw, trembling faintly. In all my years, she murmured, I have lived by logic, controlled every impulse, suppressed every hunger, until you. Her gaze held his like a blade at his throat. You did not just touch my skin, Connor. You rewrote me. You altered what I am. His breath came ragged. Azra. Her hand slipped lower, flattening against his chest, where his heart hammered like a drum. And then, in a voice no louder than starlight, she said it. I am carrying your child. The word struck like a pulse bomb, detonating in the hollow of his ribs. For a moment, the world tilted, the stars spinning in the glass beyond. He stared at her, searching her face for the flicker of a jest, a misunderstanding. There was none. Only truth, vast and immutable. That's impossible, he whispered, though the denial felt hollow even as it left his lips. Your species, your biology, was never meant for natural conception, she finished for him, her voice soft, fierce, shimmering with something that might have been pride or wonder. And yet it happened. No Farian has ever carried life in this way. Until now, Connor's mind reeled. The implications thundered through him, scientific, political, catastrophic. Two species, divided by eons of evolution, bound in flesh. The first true hybrid, a living bridge. A spark of fear flared in him, sharp and cold, but it was drowned in something greater, something incandescent. He reached for her, his hands cupping her face, his forehead pressing to hers. Her skin was cool, but the heat between them could have burned the stars out of the sky. This changes everything, he breathed. Yes, she whispered. Her lips brushed his, a ghost of a kiss that felt like a vow. For them, for us, for the galaxy. Outside, the stars wheeled in silence. And on the edge of that endless dark, a human and an alien stood together, their hearts beating a rhythm no logic could contain. A rhythm that would echo across worlds, across empires, across time itself. The beginning of an alliance. The birth of a revolution. And the first cry of a life that would redefine existence. The end